Chapter 11. Yawgmoth's lift system was installed into the caves of the damned. Mining automatons worked ceaselessly for months, boring a new shaft straight down. A series of cables and pulleys conveyed a huge platform through the shaft. No graceful invention of Glacian's, this ugly rig had been designed by Dungas, the same artificer who had invented the Power Stone commode called by the same name. Elevator and Dungas served the same function, hurling the refuse of Halcyon below. The first batch of quarantine patients to ride the lift arrived atop a load of lumber. 6 men, 3 women, and a boy huddled among the straining cables that lowered the elevator. It was a precarious perch. Once when the contraption lurched, a man fell between the elevator and the shaft. He was minced by the oblivious machine. His remains tumbled away into darkness. At the bottom, he was only a warm pulp on the floor. Jix and his crew stood just beyond that pulp. The elevator squealed and shuddered. Splinters fluttered down amid a fine rain of wood dust and stone grit. With the final few jolts, the lift struck ground. Lumber slumped sideways. Its bindings broke. Boards and refugees spilled from the elevator into the muck. "Clear away this lumber. Get them out," Jix shouted. He yanked up planks and threw them aside, clawing his way to hands and faces. 2 of the men were unconscious, and their heels dragged tracks behind them as they were pulled free. 1 woman had a broken ankle. 2 others walked away unscathed. The boy survived, and the 3 other men, who limped from the wreck. Jix found one other item among the blood-soaked planks, a note. From Health Counselor Yawgmoth to his trusted associate Jix. "Greetings. Make these 10 folk as comfortable as possible among the other patients in the quarantine cave. They present a serious hazard to the public health. The load of lumber is to be used to build beds. Nails and tools will arrive in a subsequent shipment. The city will also provide shipments of mattresses, sheets, pillows, food, and clothing, to care for the infirm. Use these supplies to reward those who assist you and assure compliance from the rest. In compensation to the cave community for this added burden, I request that you liberate the following 10 persons from the caves. I have selected each personally for the contribution he or she can make to the city. Let them know housing is ready for them, and they will be put to use in my own personal health corps. Congratulate them for me. Expect another set of refugees tomorrow and a similar list of folk to liberate. The supplies that accompany the new arrivals should enrich their lives and eventually the lives of all those in the caves, and in Halcyon. Thank you for your continued faithful service. I will provide more serum at the end of the week. Yawgmoth." Jix lowered the note and stared, disbelieving, at the blood-stained pile of splinters before him. Beneath his breath, he said, "Yawgmoth has provided us lovely beds." Lovely beds. 6 months ago, it had been only idle speculation. Now it was a fully developed mathematical proof that would transform Halcyon again. He had proved it. Power stones contained not only vast energies but also vast spaces. A powerful enough stone could even contain a whole world. "I am the genius of Halcyon." Glacian paused, looking feverishly at hundreds of sheets of calculations. They lay in piles across the lapboard he had fitted to his wheelchair. Columns of numbers marched up each page, laced together with logical proofs and sketched diagrams. He had worked these theories out in lucid moments between spasms of pain and the unconsciousness that frequently followed. Some lines of reasoning continued boldly onward, though the hand that scribed them grew steadily enervated. Some sketches were only half-formed when Glacian slumped across them. Poring over his work, he often encountered brilliant turns of logic and rigorous argumentation that he couldn't remember developing. It was as though another Glacian collaborated with him. Despite amnesia and physical degeneration, Glacian had developed his most brilliant theory yet. In this model, the physical and temporal dimensions of reality are warped by energetic bombardment. When reality becomes deeply convoluted, it traps energy so that it travels in circles instead of straight lines. Thus, the warping of reality by energy slows and solidifies that same energy. Eventually, energy and dimensional reality are compacted enough to form matter. Conversely, to change matter back into energy as happens in the charging of power stones is to unfold the dimensions of reality, to create space. The charging of power stones unleashes vast stores of energy by unfolding vast tracts of space. Originally, Glacian believed the introduction of any matter into that space would only cause it to collapse again. Now he knew that any new matter introduced would bring its own compacted space with it. Therefore, a large power stone contains a huge empty space into which items and persons could be introduced. Whole new worlds could be created inside power stones. I know an architect for those new worlds. Glacian had even mapped the organizational principles of spaces within various stones. If a stone is spherical, the space within would be organized in concentric spheres, nested stacks of matter with the locus of energy at the precise center. Elaborate sketches showed the sort of nested spheres that could be built within even a small power stone. They would be floating neighborhoods in which hundreds of people could live in bright beauty and safety. Rebek could build another whole city within the power stones of her temple. At last, those who ascended need never descend again. Only one task remained: to discover a pathway into those vast spaces. Glacian had been working that insoluble problem for the last month. Thrice he had almost taken his discovery to Rebek, but he wanted the revelation to be complete. Energy warps space and time, so drawing it off would flatten it, provide a momentary pathway past crystalline matter. No, the resultant explosion would destroy crystal and traveler and world, all Glacian muttered, wrinkling the much-marked sheet before him. He held it up in a shaking fist. How to get into that crumple of space and mass? How to open the gateway? How to win back the city from Yawgmoth? How to win back Rebek? He awoke some time later, leaning back in his wheelchair. Beyond the window, the sky was inky with night. Someone had neatly stacked his sheaves of proofs on a nearby table. Someone had removed his lapboard, emptied the tubes that drained his urine, placed pillows behind his head, and set a blanket over his shoulders. Who the hell did this? Glacian growled. The young healer Cod strode out from behind a shelf laden with serum jars. You said you were done working tonight. I said no such thing. Glacian hissed. I was near to a breakthrough. I just nodded off a moment. Cod's brow knitted, and he set down the scalpel he held. No. You asked me to take you to see your wife, and then you said you were done working and wanted to sleep. What are you talking about? Glacian growled. Where's my wife? Don't you remember? I don't care what you just did. Take me to see her. Where's my wife? Cod snorted, she's in the next room, eating her supper. Take me to her. Let me wash my hands. I been dissecting a cat, take me. A tight smile crossed Cod's face. Of course, I will take you. He circled around behind Glacian, arrayed the various tubes and bags on the back of the chair, and wheeled him toward the door. En route, Glacian snatched up the piled manuscript and set it on his lap. As they continued down the hall, he talked with conspiratorial excitement. I have something to show her. Yes, I know, Cod replied flatly. You did last time too. Last time. I should warn you, she's not dining alone. The smooth sweep of the infirmary walls tucked the diners out of sight, but their shadows showed in glowing motion, and their conversation sifted to Glacian. A man's voice, that woman we found those months ago, the one with the torque. Some would say you and Glacian have done the same thing to the city, taken an old, fat lady and dressed her up in the illusions of youth and health, while everything turns to plague beneath. Who says such things? Rebek's voice. In fact, what is the THRAN Temple but a huge torque, casting a glamour over the city? Pardon the intrusion. Again, Cod said as he wheeled Glacian into the room, but your husband asked that I bring him down here. Rebek sat on one side of a well-spread lab table. Tureens and platters gave up their last steam in the light of half-burned candles. Rolls turned cold in their basket. On the other side of the table sat Yawgmoth. Behind him, a needless fire burned in an incinerator, hearkening back to romantic hearths. Glacian had caught them in flagranti delicto. The two broke off mid-conversation and turned toward him, quizzical and impatiently polite. Rebek raised her eyebrows. "Hello, Glacian," she said with a voice that sounded weary. "You wanted to see me. What are you doing, having a candlelight dinner with?" "Not this again," she responded, lifting the napkin from her lap, crumpling it, and letting it fall across her plate. "We explained all this no more than 20 minutes ago. What are you talking about? It's as if you've split into two people who don't talk to each other." Yawgmoth nodded. "Not a typical effect of the thesis, from what I've..." "Shut up," Glacian growled at Yawgmoth. He turned wrathful eyes on his wife. "A candlelight dinner? When I'm sitting in the other room?" Rebek bowed her head, seeming to muster patience. "I invited you to this a week ago. You said you wouldn't come if I'd be here," Yawgmoth put in. "Shut up," Glacian demanded. "And I had already asked him. It was in appreciation for his intensive work on your case." "Intensive work? Yawgmoth has been working long into the night on your condition." "On worsening it?" Glacian fumed. "I suppose you've worked long into the night with him. Sometimes you even discuss me together in your sleep." Rebek blanched, and her eyes grew angry. "What are you trying to imply?" "Oh, isn't it obvious? Throw off the old genius for the new. Trade in the used-up old leper for the man who preys on used-up old lepers." "Stop, Glacian," Rebek hissed. "Stop before you say something you regret." "I've never said anything I regret." "Yes. And look at you," Yawgmoth shouted, standing. "Bitter. Angry. Paranoid. Alone except for one person in all the world and determined to push her away too. This is how you pay back fidelity." "All right, enough, both of you," Rebek said. She rubbed her temples in pain. "We've had this argument already just 20 minutes ago. Now dinner is done. Show us what you wanted us to see." Glacian shook his head, a petulant child. "Take me back, Cod." With a sigh, the young man said, "Just like last time." He pulled on the wheelchair. "Wait, Cod," Yawgmoth said, striding toward them. "I don't want another dinner interrupted." "You'll not have another dinner with my wife? Go, Cod." "Stay, Cod," Yawgmoth commanded. He stooped and snatched up the pile of papers. "Ah, this." He nodded, casually flipping through the pages and holding out drawings for Rebek to look at. "Ingenious, really. He's discovered that every charged power stone contains a large plane. See, here's the logic string that proves it, and a set of calculations." "Give that back," Glacian shouted. His hands clawed impotently at the air. "Cod, get it back." Cod strode out around the wheelchair. Yawgmoth held a staying hand before him. "Here, these are sketches of buildings you could build in those spaces. One foundation stone in your temple could hold 10,000 such buildings, 1,000,000 people, the whole of Halcyon and the caves and the people for 200 miles. Looking up from the page, Rebek said, "Glacian, this is magnificent. Give it back." "How do you know all this?" Yawgmoth shrugged, flipping pages. "You said you'd been working on your own cure. I was understandably curious. You sleep a lot. I didn't even have to lift pages. They were all laid out in front of me." "You're a thief. You steal other men's ideas. You claim them for your own," Glacian roared. "Look at the cities within cities." Rebek marveled. "There's just one catch," Yawgmoth said with a gentle laugh. There's no way to get into or out of one of these planes' infinite spaces that can never be reached. Give me that. Glacian said, wrenching the papers from the hands of his tormentor. In a fit of pique, he flung back the incinerator grate and hurled the pages within. Immediately, they burst into flame. No! Rebek shouted, falling to her knees before the incinerator. With bare hands she raked burning pages from the fire and patted them out on the floor. Why did you do that? You don't deserve my work. The city doesn't deserve my work, Glacian hissed. Take me out of here, Cod. Gladly, the young man responded and pulled him toward the door. Even as Rebek hauled charred sketches and equations from the fire, Yawgmoth circled before the man in the wheelchair and knelt down in his path. Here's a little something for you to think about as you look for a door into those crystals. If a plane is created whenever a power stone is charged, perhaps a power stone could be charged by absorbing an existing plane. If you find a doorway in, you may also find a means of absorbing large tracts of land, even whole worlds, a doomsday weapon. As with all your discoveries, the brilliance of this new theory casts a killing shadow. Let go. Let go. Glacian shrieked, pounding on Yawgmoth's hand. Get me out of here, Cod. Get me out of here. Yawgmoth released the chair and stood, letting the invalid pass. He crossed arms over his chest, shook his head, and laughed. Get over here, Rebek called, struggling to put out the burning pages. Help me save what I can. With a casual shrug, Yawgmoth approached. We'll save what we can. Don't worry about the rest. I've memorized much of it. I'm not the genius of Halcyon for nothing, you know. Glacian awoke that night in his bed. Morning crouched below the horizon. He didn't remember going to bed. He didn't remember being strapped in. The last thing he remembered was sitting in the lab, waiting angrily for Yawgmoth and Rebek to finish their meal and come see his work. His work. By the light of early morning, he could see the papers did not rest on the stand beside the bed. Whoever had put him here must have left it lying on his desk like a half-finished meal. Glacian slipped one arm from beneath the straps, grasped a cane, and rapped loudly on the bed frame. He had to keep up the racket for whole minutes, he, an invalid with barely the strength to breathe before the sleepy healer on duty came from the next room. It was Cod, muzzy and ruffled. What? What is it? Go get the manuscript. Cod gave a weary sigh. What manuscript? The one I've been working on for 6 months, you idiot. What other manuscript? A look of dread filled the young man's eyes. Oh, no. Not this, not what? Bring me the manuscript. You burned the manuscript. What? I was there. You threw it into the incinerator. You liar. You lying monster. Where is it? Where are you hiding it? I'm not hiding it. Ask Yawgmoth. Ask your wife. You're all in this together. They've got whatever's left of it burned up bits. I can't believe it. You're trying to destroy me. Yawgmoth is stealing my ideas. It's not like that at all. Monsters. Damned monsters.